When your energy shifts from need to silence, something powerful happens, and most of the time, the other person can't even explain what they're feeling, but they feel it deeply. See, people get used to the sound of your voice, your questions, your concern, your presence. They get comfortable with your emotional investment. They don't always value it, but they do expect it. And when that energy changes, not violently, not dramatically, but quietly, that's when it haunts them. You used to check in, right? You used to care. You used to wonder where he was, what he was thinking, how he was feeling. You tried to understand him. You tried to make it work. You thought maybe if you held on just a little longer, gave a little more, explained yourself better, he'd see it, he'd feel it. But he didn't. And eventually you realized you were explaining your worth to someone who wasn't even listening. And that realization changes everything. That's when your energy shifts. You no longer ask if he's okay. You no longer wonder if he's thinking about you. You stop overanalyzing his words. You stop waiting for a response. You let go. Not because you stopped caring altogether, but because you finally started caring about yourself more. And that shift speaks louder than any conversation you ever had. Now suddenly, he feels something's different. And he can't put his finger on it. You didn't make a big announcement. You didn't say, I'm done. You just moved different. You just stopped showing up in the way he got used to. In the silence, it's unfamiliar. It's uncomfortable because it isn't empty. It's full of everything he took for granted. That silence starts to eat at him. He remembers your attention, your consistency, your warmth. He remembers the way your energy felt, how safe, how soft, how present it was. But now, it's gone. And it didn't go with a bang. It slipped away like a shadow, and it left behind a strange stillness, a haunting kind of quiet. He won't even understand why he feels unsettled. He'll go on with his day, he'll laugh with his friends, but deep down, something will feel missing, and it is. You're missing. Not just physically, emotionally, spiritually. Your need for him, your chase, your constant trying, that's what fed his ego. And now that it's gone, he feels small. He'll replay old conversations, read over old texts, look at photos that once felt boring to him, and now, suddenly, they hit different because he's not getting that energy anymore, and energy doesn't lie. He's no longer receiving what he didn't even realize he was addicted to. He didn't appreciate it when he had it, but now that it's gone, he can't stop thinking about it. This is what happens when you grow, when you heal, when you stop trying to prove yourself to someone who never saw you clearly in the first place. You begin to move with peace, and peace is terrifying to someone who only knew you through chaos. You're not angry, you're not bitter, you're not chasing, you're just done. And that's what haunts him, not your presence, but the loss of it. Because people can ignore a voice, but they can never unfeel a silence. He'll never forget the moment he realized your energy shifted, because that's the moment he started to lose access to it forever. He thought you'd always be there, that no matter how he treated you, how many times he pushed you away, how many times he made you feel small, you'd keep coming back. Because that's what you did. You showed up, you gave, you forgave, you stayed longer than you should have. And to him, that meant your love had no limits. But here's what he never understood. Your silence was never weakness, it was patience. And patience has a limit too. At first, he didn't notice it. He thought the space you gave him was temporary. He thought your absence was a strategy. He assumed you were just trying to get a reaction, that you'd come back like always. But days passed, then weeks, and you didn't reach out, you didn't explain, you didn't beg, you just let it be. And that's when it started to sink in. Something was different this time. You see, when a woman detaches emotionally, it doesn't start with the body, it starts in the heart, in the mind. And once she's mentally gone, physically leaving is just a formality. You were already gone the moment he made you feel like your presence didn't matter. The moment he made you feel like your love was a burden, that's when something in you quietly shut down. No tears, no arguments, just stillness. And he doesn't know what to do with that stillness because he's used to the noise, the conversations, the care, the messages, the energy, the loyalty. He's used to you being there no matter how cold he got. He got so used to your emotional labor, he never stopped to ask how you were feeling. He never stopped to notice the emotional weight you were carrying just to keep the connection alive. But now that connection is gone, and he's starting to feel the emptiness he created. He's starting to realize that you weren't asking for much. You were asking for the bare minimum: consistency, respect, effort, presence. And somehow even that was too much for him. And now that you've gone silent, he's being forced to confront the truth. He never really saw you, not fully, not deeply, not as the gift you were. He'll remember the moments he overlooked, the times you reached out and he gave half-hearted replies, the days you needed reassurance and he brushed it off like you were being needy, the way you tried to build something stable, something solid, and he responded with confusion or indifference. Those moments will haunt him, not because of guilt, but because he'll finally start to realize what they cost him. He's not just missing a person, he's missing peace. He's missing stability. He's missing someone who saw through his flaws and still tried to love him whole. And now he's left with the echo of your absence. An absence that doesn't scream, but it speaks louder than any words ever could. Because your absence is not a punishment, it's a boundary. It's a declaration that you will no longer pour yourself into places that refuse to pour back. And the haunting part, he still won't understand why it hurt so much. Because on the surface, it looks like you just disappeared. But underneath, you didn't disappear. You freed yourself. You stopped performing. You stopped bleeding for someone who wasn't even trying to heal. And that realization, it stings. It lingers. It echoes in the spaces you used to fill. He thought you'd always be there until you weren't. And now that you're gone, he'll carry that silence with him like a shadow, not because of what you did, but because of everything he didn't do when he had the chance. He won't admit it. He might never say the words out loud, but deep down, something inside him changed the moment you stopped chasing. The moment you stopped explaining yourself, the moment you stopped trying to prove your worth to someone who was too blind to see it. That shift, the psychological shift, is subtle, but it's powerful. And it hits a man in ways he never expects. Because when you were always available, always texting back, always checking in, always asking if he was okay, it gave him a sense of control. Not because he was evil, but because he was comfortable. Your love was predictable. He could count on your affection, your loyalty, your softness. And that predictability created a dangerous illusion that he didn't have to try because you weren't going anywhere. But then something shifted. You didn't yell. You didn't slam the door. You didn't try to guilt trip him. You just pulled back quietly, strategically, authentically. You didn't make it a game, you made a decision. You stopped showing up for someone who refused to meet you halfway. You stopped sacrificing your peace to explain your worth to someone who made you question it in the first place. And that's when the uneasiness began for him. Not because you said anything, but because you didn't. He could feel the shift, your energy change, the tone in your voice, the timing of your replies, the way you stopped asking what he was doing or where he was going. It all told a story louder than words. And that's the kind of shift that haunts a man. Because it's not drama, it's not chaos, it's the absence of it. It's calm, it's quiet, and that's when it becomes real. See, men often expect emotion in the form of reaction. They expect you to cry, to beg, to ask them why they've become distant. That gives them reassurance. It feeds their ego. It tells them they still have a place in your heart. But silence is different. It's confusing. It's unsettling. It creates a vacuum. And in that vacuum, he's left alone with the one thing he's been avoiding all along, himself. That's when the memories come flooding in. The times you were there when no one else was, the way you forgave him for things you should have walked away from, the look in your eyes when you were trying to hold the relationship together while he took it for granted. He remembers all of it now, but it's too late because your energy no longer centers around him. You've reclaimed your power, and the silence proves it. What haunts him isn't your anger, it's your absence. What unsettles him isn't your confrontation, it's your peace. Because peace means you've moved on in a way that doesn't require his validation. You no longer need to be understood. You no longer need closure. You became your own closure. And here's the twist. He doesn't even know why he's feeling the way he feels. He'll go on with his life, act unbothered, post on social media like nothing happened. But inside, something's off. There's a gap he can't explain, a weight he can't name. And every now and then, late at night, he'll wonder, what changed? Why does it feel so different now? Why does your name still echo in his chest? He won't realize it was the moment you decided to stop chasing someone who refused to meet you where you stood. That was the shift. That was the moment the power returned to you and left a silence in his life that he can't outrun. And that's how he'll remember you, not as the one who begged, but as the one who walked away and never looked back. He was never ready for you to stop explaining. See, most men, especially the ones who take you for granted, depend on your explanations more than you realize. They rely on your emotional labor, your constant clarifying, your willingness to smooth over the tension, to fix the miscommunication, to hold the relationship together, even when you're the only one trying. And when you stop doing that, it shakes the foundation they were comfortably standing on. When a woman constantly explains herself, constantly tries to help him understand how she feels, what she needs, where things are going wrong, it gives him an emotional cushion. He might not listen every time. He might ignore it, dismiss it, even twist your words. But deep down, it reassures him. It gives him a sense of control. Because if you're still explaining, it means you still care. It means you're still invested. It means he still matters. But the moment you go quiet, the moment you stop breaking your own heart trying to get him to see yours, that's when something shifts in his mind. Because now he's not dealing with a woman who's just emotional. He's facing a woman who's emotionally done. And there is nothing more powerful, more unforgettable, more haunting than that. When a man is no longer confused by your words, but confronted by your silence, he doesn't know what to do. He's not used to you not explaining yourself. He's not used to you no longer defending your actions, your choices, your feelings. And the absence of your voice leaves him alone with one thing he can't run from: accountability. Your silence forces him to start asking the questions you used to answer for him. Why did she stop trying? Why doesn't she care anymore? Was it really that bad? Did I push her too far? All those questions used to be directed at you, but now they circle back to him. They sit with him when he's scrolling through his phone. They whisper in his ear late at night, and they start to erode the false sense of control he thought he had. It's because when you stop explaining, you're no longer seeking understanding, you're declaring your independence. Stepping back, not as a punishment, but as a self-respect move. You're choosing peace over potential. You're choosing silence over repeated explanations that only fell on deaf ears. And that silence is deafening to a man who never thought you'd stop trying. It's not that he didn't hear you before. He just never thought your words would stop coming. He thought you'd always come back, always reach out, always try to make it right, even when he was the one who broke it. But silence, that's not something he can argue with. That's not something he can gaslight. That's not something he can twist. Silence just is. and that's why it lingers. He might not react right away, he might pretend not to notice, but deep down, he knows something has changed. He feels it in how your energy is no longer around him. He feels it when you stop checking in, when your presence fades from his everyday life. That absence becomes louder than your presence ever was because it's filled with meaning he can't ignore. Eventually, he'll remember all the things you used to say. He'll replay those conversations in his mind, trying to find the moment when you gave up, trying to pinpoint when your heart stopped, trying to reach his. And he'll never be able to find a clear answer because the change didn't happen with words. It happened when you stopped using them. Your silence is your evolution. Your lack of explanation is your strength. And long after you've moved on, long after you've healed, he'll still be trying to understand the shift. He'll still feel the weight of what your silence meant. Because that psychological shift, it leaves a mark that no amount of noise can ever erase. There comes a point when your absence doesn't just create space, it creates a mirror he never wanted to look into. See, when you were there, physically, emotionally, spiritually, he didn't have to face himself. He could point to you, blame your reaction, criticize your tone, get defensive about your questions. As long as you were present, he could avoid the uncomfortable truth of who he was when no one was catering to his comfort. But the moment you walked away, not just physically, but energetically, that mirror appeared. And it's not a flattering one. It shows him everything he's ignored, the way he dodged responsibility, the way he never showed up emotionally, the way he grew comfortable with you overcompensating. Without you there to absorb his avoidance, he's left standing in front of that mirror, forced to confront his reflection. And make no mistake, that reflection will haunt him. Because here's the thing, your absence doesn't just mean you're gone. It means the spotlight is now on him. He has no distractions, no one to argue with, no one to pacify him, no one to take the edge off his own dissatisfaction. That silence, it becomes a sound he can't turn down. Every moment he used to lean on your emotional labor becomes a moment he now has to carry himself. And he doesn't know how. He starts asking himself, was it really all her fault? Why did she stop caring? Was I ever truly listening? And those questions don't go away. They show up in conversations he's having with other people. They show up in the moments he feels hollow, even when surrounded by distractions. They show up in the late night thoughts that interrupt his sleep. Because the truth is, your absence disrupted his illusion. Most men underestimate what a woman does until she stops doing it. He might have never said thank you when you cooked or comforted him or asked how he was really doing. He might have dismissed your emotional needs, called them too much, or made you feel like you were asking for the impossible. But now that it's gone, now that you've taken your light with you, the room he's in feels darker than he expected. He tries to replace it, maybe with someone new, maybe with work, maybe with distraction. But nothing fits quite right because it wasn't just your presence. It was the way your presence made him feel safe, seen, supported. And now without it, he's realizing how much he relied on something he never nurtured. That absence, it's not a punishment, it's a revelation. And it shows up like a shadow he can't run from. Even if he doesn't admit it. Even if he pretends he's fine, he knows something has shifted. People around him may not see it, but he feels it. Because your absence restructured the emotional ecosystem he was used to. It made him sit with the consequences of his neglect, and no amount of noise, ego, or excuses can fill that space where your effort used to live. The truth is, people can only ignore the mirror for so long. Sooner or later, they're forced to face it. And when they do, what they see isn't always beautiful. That's the haunting part. Not that you left, but that you revealed who they truly were when you stopped holding up the mask. Your absence became the silence that spoke the loudest. And once someone hears that kind of silence, they never forget it. You see, there's something unnerving about consistency, especially when it's gone. When someone shows up for you day in and day out, you begin to depend on it. You may not say it out loud, you may not even be conscious of it, but you lean on it. And when that consistency suddenly disappears, it shakes the foundation you thought was solid. That's the shift we're talking about. That quiet exit, that change in rhythm. It creates an echo that doesn't fade quickly. He'll notice it in the places he never expected to, not just in the messages you stop sending or the calls that no longer come, but in the rhythm of his day. He was used to your encouragement, used to your check-ins, used to the way you notice the things nobody else did. And when you stop, when your presence no longer fills in the emotional gaps he's avoided tending to himself, that's when the ache begins. At first, he might play it cool, pretend he doesn't notice, tell himself you're just being dramatic or taking a break. But deep down, that silence, that break in your consistency, it disrupts something. It forces him to ask the questions he's been avoiding. Why did she really stop showing up for me? Why does her absence feel heavier than her presence ever did? Because when someone is consistent, they become a part of your identity. You stop seeing them as someone who chooses to show up. You start seeing them as someone who will show up every time. And that's the trap. He forgot your presence was a choice. He mistook your loyalty for obligation. He believed your care was endless. And now, without it, he's left grappling with the reality that nothing about you was guaranteed. It was given freely, willingly, and now it's gone. Here's the part that stings. He never thought you'd leave. Not really. You see, he tested the limits, took you for granted, assumed you'd always be there because, well, you always were. And when someone becomes used to receiving from a person who expects nothing in return, they begin to believe it's normal, expected, deserved. But silence breaks that illusion. Absence breaks that comfort. When you remove your consistency, you remove the illusion of control. He no longer gets to lean on you without effort. He no longer gets the privilege of your presence without the responsibility of mutual respect. And that shift, that's what haunts him. Because now he remembers the small things, the way you remembered his appointments, the way you encouraged his dreams, the way you believed in him, even when he doubted himself. At the time, he brushed it off, called it support, labeled it normal. But now, without it, he realizes that was love. That was intentional. That was rare. And here's the kicker. He can't recreate that feeling on demand. He can't just snap his fingers and replace what he lost. Because consistency isn't about big gestures. It's about a pattern of presence. And once that pattern is broken, it's not easy to rebuild, especially when the person who built it is no longer willing to return. So now every moment he sits in silence, every time he reaches for the phone and doesn't know who to call, every time something good or bad happens and he reflexively thinks of you, that's when he feels it. The loss of consistency, the loss of something that never asked for attention but made all the difference. And that's what leaves the longest mark. Not the absence itself, but what the absence represents, a choice, a boundary, a realization that your peace mattered more than proving your worth. That kind of shift, it lives in the background of his days, unseen, but always felt, always present, always reminding him of the one thing he thought he could count on until it was gone. There's something powerful about withdrawing your energy from someone who thought they had unlimited access to it. See, when you were there, you were all in. You didn't love halfway. You didn't show up inconsistently. You poured, you nurtured, you gave from a place of deep sincerity. And maybe he didn't realize that what you were giving him wasn't ordinary. It was sacred. It was rare. And most of all, it was a choice you made daily. But when you start to pull back, when you begin reclaiming the energy you so freely gave, something psychological happens in him. At first, confusion. He doesn't understand the shift. He senses something is different. Your responses are slower, your words fewer, your presence lighter, but he can't put his finger on it because he's still operating from the assumption that your energy was endless, that it would always be available for him to soak in, regardless of how he showed up or didn't. Then comes denial. He tells himself you're just busy, that you're going through a phase, that you'll snap out of it and return to your normal. But what he doesn't realize is that you're not returning. You've made the internal shift. And once that inner decision is made to pull back, to conserve your emotional investment, it's almost impossible to go back to the version of you that overextended just to feel seen. Eventually it hits him, that slow, creeping realization. He no longer has access to you in the way he used to. And this is where the haunting begins. Because when he starts to notice how light he feels without your heavy presence, without your daily affirmations, your emotional labor, your steady patience, it doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like loss. A loss he can't explain. A shift he can't articulate. Because your presence wasn't loud, it wasn't controlling. It was gentle, constant, reassuring. And now that it's gone, he's beginning to feel the emotional weight of his own neglect. He begins to replay the moments when you showed up for him and he didn't notice. The little things. The way you always remembered what mattered to him, even when he forgot to ask what mattered to you. The way you offered a listening ear, even when you had your own storms raging inside. The way you protected his peace, even while sacrificing your own. And now, in your absence, those moments play back like memories that won't rest. That's the psychology behind it. You see, people remember how you made them feel, but they remember it most when that feeling is no longer present, when the space you once filled remains empty, not because you're punishing them, but because you finally decided your energy is too valuable to be taken for granted. And he'll never understand the full depth of what he lost, because he never truly understood what he had. The haunting doesn't come from your silence, it comes from what your silence represents. That you no longer need validation, that you've outgrown the dynamic where you overgive and he underdelivers, that you've finally chosen yourself over the illusion of connection. That's the moment he feels it most, not when you walked away, but when he realizes you're never coming back in the same way. And that version of you, the one who showed up no matter what, she's gone. And she's not coming back. And now he's left with nothing but the echo of who you used to be, trying to piece together why the room feels colder without your warmth, even though he's the one who left the door open. There's a subtle kind of transformation that happens when a woman stops waiting, when she stops hoping, stops explaining, stops stretching herself just to be understood. And it doesn't start with a loud declaration. It starts quietly, with her realizing that her peace is louder than his confusion, that her silence communicates what her words never could. And when that moment comes, when she finally stops chasing clarity or closure, she doesn't even announce it. He just shifts. He won't notice it at first. He might even think you're giving him space or that you're caught up in something temporary. But what's actually happening is permanent. You're evolving into a version of yourself that no longer depends on his recognition to feel worthy. And that's the moment everything changes. You see, in relationships, some people thrive on the assumption that you'll always be there, that no matter how little they give, how often they withdraw, you'll still show up with your softness, your presence, your forgiveness. They mistake your consistency for weakness. But what they don't realize is that the very thing they're taking for granted is the foundation that's been holding everything together. When you remove yourself from that dynamic, when you no longer react, no longer explain, no longer beg to be understood, you stop playing the role he assigned to you. You're no longer the emotional safety net. You're no longer the fixer of miscommunication or the healer of his inner wounds. And that's when he starts to feel it deeply. Because your withdrawal isn't punishment, it's preservation. It's reclaiming all the energy you spent trying to love someone who wasn't ready to receive it. And when that energy returns to you, you begin to glow differently. You stop being anxious. You stop checking your phone. You stop rehearsing what you'll say to make him get it. Because now it no longer matters if he gets it, you get it. You finally understand that staying in your peace is more valuable than explaining your worth. And here's the part he won't see coming. The way your absence starts to mirror his emotional neglect. The silence that once frightened you now becomes your sanctuary. The detachment that once broke your heart now becomes your freedom. And he will feel it, not in the loud, dramatic ways used to, but in the stillness of your absence, in the steady quiet of being unseen by you. There's something about realizing that someone who once needed your validation has stopped needing anything from you. That's what haunts him. Not your words, not your reactions, but your neutrality, your indifference. Because indifference means you've healed. And healing without needing revenge or validation is the most powerful closure you can ever offer yourself. So don't underestimate the power of letting go, of not responding, of no longer needing to prove your point, because your energy, when protected, becomes a mirror. And when he finally looks into that mirror and sees only himself, he won't recognize the reflection, because the version of you that kept holding on no longer lives there. And that's when he realizes you were never the problem. You were the presence that gave him peace and the absence that revealed his own emptiness. There's a truth most people learn too late. When someone stops fighting for a relationship, it's not always anger or bitterness that cause the shift. Sometimes it's exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, but emotional. Deep, soul-tired fatigue that comes from being unheard, unseen, and undervalued. And by the time that person goes silent, they're not trying to make a point anymore. They've simply reached their limit. A woman doesn't go silent to manipulate. She goes silent because she's already said everything she could say. She's poured herself out, emptied her fears, shared her needs, opened her heart, and none of it moved him. None of it made him see her. And so silence becomes her final language, the last sentence in a chapter she never wanted to end, but had to, for the sake of her dignity. That's the kind of silence that haunts a man. Not because of what she said, but because of what she no longer says. He notices when the calls stop, when the texts aren't sent, when the check-ins disappear. He notices when the voice that used to fight for the connection has gone still, and it confuses him because it's the first time her energy isn't there to cushion his inconsistency. You see, some men get comfortable with being emotionally careless when they believe a woman will always be there to carry the emotional weight. They don't truly appreciate her presence because they assume she'll never leave. But when she finally goes quiet, it forces them to confront the emptiness they helped create. Her silence doesn't just create a void, it exposes one that already existed inside of him. And here's the twist. She doesn't have to block him, curse him out, or post about him online. No drama, no final speech, just peace. Because healing doesn't need noise, it just needs distance. And when she chooses herself quietly, without spectacle, he begins to see just how much sound she brought to his silence, just how much light she offered his shadow. And now that silence echoes back all the things he never said and never did. That's the psychological shift most men never expect. They think power is in control, in detachment, in not needing anyone. But real power is in being remembered by the ones who chose to walk away in love, not in hate. She left with grace. She let go, not because she didn't care, but because she finally started caring for herself more. So when he replays it all, when the silence starts to weigh heavier than her presence ever did, He won't understand why he feels it so deeply. He'll think about reaching out, but the energy won't be the same. He'll look for her, but she'll no longer be available at the emotional level where he left her. She didn't just walk away, she leveled up, spiritually, emotionally, mentally. And in that growth, she found something he never gave her: peace, clarity, and self-worth. That's the real ending, when the silence teaches him what your voice never could. There comes a moment, often long after you've gone, when he'll sit with the silence you left behind and realize that your absence isn't just about you no longer being around. It's about the version of himself that only existed in your presence disappearing too. That's the part that haunts him most. Because when a woman truly loved, supported, encouraged, and believed in him, he became someone greater in her light. But when that light goes out, when your voice, your kindness, your reminders of his worth fade away, he starts to notice that it wasn't just you that left. It was the best version of him. You see, people don't often realize the role someone plays in their growth until they have to stand on their own without it. He didn't just lose you. He lost the stability of your emotional availability. He lost the comfort of knowing someone had his back, even on the days he didn't deserve it. And most importantly, he lost the mirror you were for his potential. You reflected back to him everything he could become. And now that reflection is gone, and it confuses him because no one else brings that same energy. No one else matches the depth you carried in your silence, the strength you had in your softness, or the wisdom you held in your stillness. Now he finds himself surrounded by noise that doesn't reach his soul. He tries to replace the connection with distraction, but all it does is remind him of what's missing, and what's missing is you. But here's the truth he never considered. Your absence didn't just change his world. It forced him to sit with himself, to see himself without your influence. And that's when it gets real. That's when the silence starts speaking louder than anything you ever said. Because now he has to confront the emotional gaps you used to cover for him. He has to face the emotion you used to excuse, the communication breakdowns you used to patiently work through. He's now standing in the exact emotional chaos he once ignored. Only now, there's no one left to fix it but him. And this is where the haunting sets in. Not because you're haunting him, but because he's haunted by his own inaction, his own inability to cherish you when he had you. It's not just that he lost someone he loved. He lost the woman who made him better without ever asking for credit. And now the silence is a reminder that the version of himself he liked the most only came alive when you were around. And the weight of that truth, it's heavy, because he knows deep down it's not coming back. Not because you're angry, not because you're punishing him, but because you've grown beyond the place he left you in. Your silence became your elevation. And while he stayed the same, you outgrew the noise, the cycles, the waiting. And now he's left with memories that echo in the quiet memories of the way you loved him when he didn't love himself, and the way you left when he didn't learn how. And that echo will follow him, not out of cruelty, but because he finally understands what your presence truly meant.